Yes.
All right, welcome in, everybody. It is the first Wednesday of the month. It is May. It's May Day. Now, I don't know about you, but that's a perfect time for like flowers. And when I was in high school, we had the maypole. I don't know about you guys, but freshman year, the freshmen all did the maypole for the Queen's Ball, which was our version of the prom back in Westland high school days. And we had to get our fancy dresses on and dance around the maypole with the ribbons. So I've got a couple of, well, I've got several people here live and in person. While I cannot see you all, Jan, Teresa, Courtney, Ashley, Robin, Karen, I'm glad you're here, and I'm sure there will be others joining us. But I have the chat box open, so you should feel free to say hello to everybody, tell us where you're from, and even put in a note about maybe your May Day opportunity. And I don't mean May Day, May Day. I mean May 1st. So we are talking about boosting employee skills. If this is your first time listening post this first day of the program, please know that we meet the first Wednesday of the month from 12 to noon. Audio glitch, don't know where that chimed in, so forgive me there. If you are not familiar with me, I serve as the vice president of the company, and I do a tremendous amount of training for our clients on site and online, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm kind of into PowerPoints, but I don't have to use them by any stretch. Again, like to have a conversation with you all. So um, glad that you're here. As I said, like to be able to have a conversation with you. If you're comfortable putting on your cameras, then I like to be able to engage with all of you and each other. Again, I said that the chat box is open, and it looks like I was getting notes. I thought you guys were chiming in about May Day, but you probably were telling me, "Hey, May Day, your audio is off." Don't know why that did that, but well, thank you for the heads up. Um, so be able to chime in about boosting employee education and development. I think there are so many different ways with today's technology about what we can do and how we can do it. And I think that's kind of a big deal in terms of taking advantage of that. Because when we talk about what's available, I think, regular improvement opportunities and so much of it's out there and available, and in some respects doesn't cost any money, or it can be low to no dollars. That what is it that we're looking for? What are our people looking for? How can we help them? So I really want to be able to hear from you. What are we doing? Because I think that we can all agree that there is a skills gap, and cross training and reskilling and new skilling are opportunities for us with technology advancements and things that are going on, whether we're out in the field, whether we're in the office, whether we've got a small targeted group of employees or hundreds, multiple locations, or only one. It also is a retention opportunity. So when we think about learning and development, my first thought is to ask you guys about what are the skills, knowledge, key pieces? What is it you're really looking for? What are you needing that you're not seeing in your current staff? Or what is it that when you're hiring, you are seeking out to round out the gap or to advance and take you to the next level? What are those kinds of things that you're after when it comes to new staff? So, what are the key skills that you're seeking out for people? Someone weighs in. Robin. Excel. Excel skills, please. Um, can I just say that's probably my area that I need to work on? I don't have to really do that in my PowerPoint programs that much. What else are you guys looking for? This is where you get to unmute and share your ideas or your challenges. Shall I share with you what I found? That um, there's an organization called the World Economic Forum. Are you guys familiar with them at all? I like to go to them because they're kind of a futuristic. They'll pay attention to now, but they'll pay attention to the future. And let's take a look at this list and then let's add to it. I also see resilience and communication, problem solving, and dealing with those more challenging, tough conversations. And guess what? The World Economic Forum says, you bet, analytical thinking and innovation is one of the big deals for beyond now into 2025. When we think about initiative, the social influence, leadership kinds of things. And if we take the consideration, some of us were talking before this program started about how people have transitioned out of the pandemic and are they, and how well are they doing that? I still hear from people that they are struggling to make small talk, that they still are struggling with groups of people. So technology add challenging talking to people or in different kinds of environments. What's our communication skills like? And what is that doing to us? Let alone that resilience piece or flexibility and adaptability. All of those pieces, I think, add to this. And in some respects, I think that that could maybe be four key areas: problem solving, self management in some fashion, working with people, technology use, the development of the applicability of it to our workplaces, let alone, conflict resolution. I'd put in there, emotional intelligence. That was on their list last year. It was in their top four. I think that's still a big deal. So, what else might you guys be looking for? Or do these resonate with you? Okay, I'm seeing a nod.
100% for me. This is Teresa. The communication skills and the stress tolerance, the flexibility. I seem to be running into employees that we've had counseling with them. They cannot stand each other and go out of their way to be horrible to each other. And we've had mentoring, we've had counseling, and I basically broke it down to them after a 2-hour meeting and said, the only people that can fix this is yourselves. Their solution was to fire each other. That's their solution. No compromise, nothing. And so that's just unbelievable to me. So that really resonates for me.
Yeah. Which is sad because, Robin's weighing and saying emotional wellness is important. And you know what? Here's when I have the opportunity, which is frequently, to talk about respectful workplaces with clients. One of the things that I often talk about is here's the deal. And I think I got a whole host of HR related people here. I haven't seen a job description yet in all my decades that say you must like your coworkers. Now, I think it makes it more fun, the work, the environment, coming in every day. However, you don't have to like your coworkers. You do have to treat them appropriately, professionally, and respectfully. Now we have to be clear about what that looks like in terms of actions and behaviors. And when you aren't doing that, and I'm kind of, and this maybe this is a little bit of my age showing. I'm kind of surprised at what people think is okay to say to another human being. And we're talking about a human being who does have feelings, and everybody has feelings. And so, how about if we just don't always say what's on our mind, or we are thinking before we speak, or thinking before we act, which is something I was taught when I was a little girl. And how is that your option is to fire somebody as opposed to how can we work together? How best can we work together given the fact that our two departments, our two positions rely on each other for information, sharing, and passing along, or. I just, and the good news is, in all seriousness, the good news is that at least if people are still talking to each other, albeit not the way we might prefer, there's hope. It's when we're not talking to each other at all, total silence. That's when those that are mediators or therapists or counselors say that when they've stopped altogether, that it is most challenging. There's your self-help for today. All right. So I just think that we need to think about what are our skills that we're truly looking for. And then when we're hiring and interviewing, when we're thinking about development skills, when we're doing maybe performance reviews and grow and stretch goals and things like that, that are we're working with our managers on, for our managers working with employees, what does that look for? Let alone where are we as an organization now and where are we going? So when we talk about being more strategic and how do we get our folks there, are we building some of that in? Because again, then we're mapping it to the organization. We're in alignment with the goals of the organization. Because when we talk with those that are in the training and development, learning and organizational development arena, they're talking about business goals, upskilling employees, culture of learning. Do we have that inside our organizations in some fashion, let alone retention pieces and different individuals, different groups in terms of professional elements? What is it that they want out of work, right? And happy employees are productive employees. So, are we asking what's missing for them? And one of the things that I shared some of this information with a group of HR professionals with the Oregon State Council of SHRM at one of their meetings a year or so ago. And one of the things that I learned from one of the individuals who's in attendance who works for a bank that I was so pleased to hear and was a complete kind of 180 for them is they had a very focused educational process for years and years and years, which was, you've been here at the bank X number of years and you're eligible to enroll and participate in this programming or these classes to move up, move around the system, move within the branches and whatnot. And that was ingrained. That was who they were. Then they started saying, hey, this is what's available. And what we want to do is leave it up to you, more self-driven. So those of you who want it, who are more on a self-motivated path and you want to get there faster and you can do it and you're finding the time to do it and whatnot, go for it. And what they found is a lot of folks were more interested in that. And speed didn't mean not quality. Speed didn't mean not attention to detail and still meet all the criteria of understanding the information. But they didn't have to wait for, I've been here 2 years or 5 years or. And I think that that's an important factor for those that matters to them, that we're giving them to be able to have an opportunity to be self-directed in their education and their growth, professional development. So if we're talking about retention and that's something that's driving people away because we're not fast enough for them, could this be a something? Thoughts on that? Or are you guys doing that? Or you are conversing about how you change your internal university options or programming activity. Your turn to talk, my turn to listen. So I'm seeing somebody weigh in saying, I wish we were doing some of that.
Well, our industry with fire, all of it is mostly self-driven. If they want to move up, if they want to promote, if they want to do different things, it's up to them to either do the certification or do the work to get them there. So I guess in a way, we already do that. And as well for our office position, it's the same kind of thing where you know the steps that you can get to, just are you motivated enough to take those steps?
Gotcha. Well, and then with you all, you also have a tremendous amount of activity built into your, I'm going to say system, into your positions, because if you're not constantly current and up to date, if the training isn't there, then that impacts what you're able to do out in the field. True? Yeah. Okay. She's nodding for those of you who might not, quote, be seeing Ashley on the screen. And that is part of their um, entire process. And people understand that going in. And I think that that's another piece. I've heard some people over the last several years talk about, um, well, we share educational information or opportunities or whatnot when someone becomes employed with us or after they've been here a short period of time. You define short, as opposed to sharing that during the interviewing process, that this is an opportunity. These are available to you. This is something we like. This is something we invest in with our employees, so that could be part of the employee perspective, employees' decision-making opportunities. So I think that that's another component. When are we bringing that information up? Part of a job announcement versus in the interview or phone interview, versus when they're already on the job, or when they've been there and they're getting frustrated, right? Or struggling, then we bring it up. So what does that look like with your managers versus HR? Or do we think it's happening and it's not really, and we need to ensure that that information is being shared? Other observations besides we're just winging it. We're just flying by the seat of our pants. Because I'm sure people would love to beg, borrow, or steal off ideas from other people who are doing something right. And if you have, and I'm more than happy to share, I always, just FYI, I always share this PowerPoint after the program to those who were in attendance. We share that afterwards. The recording will be made available to those of you who were here, so you can watch, listen, or share it later. And so if you have samples of things that you want to share out with the group, I'm more than happy to add that to the collection so that people have an opportunity to benefit from your what you have if you're willing to share. So just know that. So one of the things that might be helpful is just maybe even some definitions when going back and gathering information. Those learning and development professionals, 60% of people identified reskilling as one of their top priorities for the year. So again, making it kind of part of the culture of learning, which could be like job shadowing of sorts. So the act of training employees on new skills or job functions to replace those existing skills to help them transition into new things. What does that look like? Can we see some things on the horizon? Versus kind of upskilling when it's learning new skills to optimize. So, i.e., the Excel, and learning how to use the spreadsheets as something, because that can help them. Maybe it's preparing them for a promotion or some kind of transition. in some fashion or another. I've been working with a hospital over at the coast, and they are transitioning to a whole new program. All employees are going to be learning that. Well, part of it is the hospital needs to do that. But the skill of that for everybody is the majority of hospitals utilize this. That will be an easier transition for everybody. While it's a change inside the organization, one of the observations is this will benefit you big picture. That's a good thing. It may be kind of a bit of a struggle and it's not intuitive to everybody. That also, when those changes is how will this benefit you down the road? And I think sometimes when it comes to the educational piece, what can you get out of this? How will it benefit you now and later? And do we talk about those things? So reskilling, upskilling, cross-skilling, describing the process of skill development across multiple functions. So in the old days, we basically used to call this cross-training and still has a lot of applicability today, right? So, and people staff members who know how to do multiple functions are more valuable to us from an organizational standpoint. So what is it that we can help with in that respects? How can they? So let's face it, in Oregon, when we've got more people perhaps on taking sick time and out, the changes with our leaves that are taking place, we're going to need more people to either cover the leaves, or we're going to need more people to be more diversified in their ability to cover when people are out, whether short term or longer term. This is a great opportunity to be thinking more about that, let alone new skills, right? Learning new approaches that are lifelong, big picture kinds of things. So, and I see a note says we're cross-training our accounting department. Yeah. So what are you guys doing? I really want to hear from you. Cross-training, reskilling, new skilling. What kinds of things are you doing to prepare your current workforce, transitions, without divulging something that is inappropriate for you to share? Obviously I don't want you to do that. I just am looking for what's working for you that is a success story. Yeah, Mel.
Sorry for joining a little late.
No, you're good.
For us, I'm finding that a lot of our SOPs, we create SOPs for when people are cross-training. It helps because you may get somebody that's new and you want them to sit down. If they've got a question, they can actually access the SOP and it'll walk them right through from beginning to end. That's one thing that helps us, and it's helping, each department. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with those, one of the things to be also thoughtful about is with any of this activity, making sure we ask people, how do you learn? So like a new employee's coming on board, and we've got not only our standard operating procedures, we've got that job description. They're going through training, maybe with somebody, with you. Maybe we've got a checklist to make sure we're covering all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I'm a very visual person, and I didn't really know that about myself in my early years, but what I've noticed is how I live my life, how my work manifests itself. I can pay attention now. I'm very much a visual person. So I do better with like a visual cue. I do better with people. We were just in a meeting and there are people who are like on their laptops taking notes. I actually do better writing notes because it is a secondary cue of I'm writing it and I'm getting the activity of writing, but I'm actually seeing my notes as I'm doing it. It's something I can go back and refer to. If I type it and it goes into a document that I can save, it's not something I can see. So an element for me. So do people have to hear it, see it, do it, all three together, make it more sticky? So how are we able to like recall information? What is it that people need? And when when we do that, we're also thinking about just our neurodiversity as a whole. How fast or how slow is information coming? Answering people's questions in a way that they understand that. So in all of our learning stuff, we had a new employee many, many years ago, all of it was in a binder written out. Didn't work for them at all. They came in and then took screenshots of everything. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And again, years ago. And then I was thinking, maybe we also need both of that together. And we need a little video because, and it was like, oh, and for some positions, that's boring. And for other positions, well, I just bring that up because your way of learning isn't someone else's learning. So we as HR professionals, when we've got an HR manager coming in who's struggling or frustrated with an employee, could that be a thing? It makes it more work on the front side to have all these different options, and yet the payoff on the back end is stellar. I don't know, is anybody doing, you have multiple avenues, multiple options for people? Okay, so we have someone who's trained once a week minimum, utilizing all the types of training. Okay, so fortunately, we have a trainer that allows our crews to train once a week minimum, utilizing all of those types. That's awesome.
Mhm.
Okay, that's good. What else are you guys doing? I am making an assumption you guys are doing training on site, training with your staff. You are, right? You're doing something? I've seen some nod. Sylvinio, you unmuted yourself. Maybe, maybe not. Okay. A lot of on-the-job training. And you know what? One of the things that I've been hearing from more and more people, and people being managers and supervisors, but also HR folks and a lot of training and development individuals from publications and articles and directly from individuals, is that when education becoming more and more expensive and truly, average cost $10,000 a year, and trying to, whether people can afford that, not afford that, what does that look like? Whether people are going to 4-year degrees or not, there's so many different ways to accomplish and get education and get knowledgeable, and programs and alternatives in terms of getting where we need to get to, that we're still hiring people who are not quite where we need them or want them to be in terms of skill set. I truly believe that there will be more on the job training that we need to do, that we need to offer, that we need to kind of accept that that is going to become our reality. And so preparing our managers and supervisors for that, preparing our budgets and our time budgets for some of that. And so being able to think about, what does that look like? Who do we have? Who's on staff that does certain things really, really well, to be able to bring that to the table? Who are our current staff members that would like to be trainers? Can we help them learn, kind of train the trainer components of bodies of work to get people skilled up in the area that we're looking for them? So I just, because one of the things is that the typical kind of things for some of us that are in this space, the typical 70-20-10 rule of learning through on the job, working with others, or some kind of intervention, some other kind of programming. I, I don't know if that's really I think we're beyond that. I don't know that that's been kind of a modern rule. And the answer is, I don't know that that's necessarily true with all the reprogramming, the video educational elements, the hybrid kind of models of things like that. Um, People are creating more of their own leadership development programs, as Ashley's sharing with us, their own internal universities, whatever they're partnering with programs or organizations to bring things in-house. Really, what are your objectives? What's missing? Who's your learner? Do we have only individuals, or are we bringing people together as groups? Are we trying to get everybody up to speed and on the same page? I have one organization that I'm working with right now, and it's a group of supervisors. And they've been supervising for a while, and yet there's a lot of gaps in information and knowledge at some of what I would consider some of the most basic level kinds of things. And so part of it's just, let's get everybody kind of up to speed on what it really means to be a supervisor, let alone what are your existing resources. And I don't mean resources for money, that's certainly a consideration, but time, energy. Are you 24/7, or are you 8 to 5? What does the work day look like? And so some of that can also mean, how much time can we really dedicate to things? But you know what? If you've got employees who aren't where they need to be, how are we going to get them there? And it doesn't mean a 4-hour program or a 3-hour program or even an hour-long program. Maybe it's 10 minutes a day. 10 minutes a day on a specific video that they watch, 10 minutes a day with that individual, their manager, their supervisor, 10 minutes a day with a dedicated trainer, 10 minutes a day, 5 days a week, you're going to equal a college course in a year. How about that as a return on your investment? So being able to think about that, because when employees have access to career development, they're 15% more engaged. And we have a 34% higher increase in retention than people who don't have access to development opportunities. That's that's tremendous, right? So, and Stewart Leadership, if that is not something you're familiar with, I would encourage you to hop online, Google them. Stewart Leadership. They've got wonderful information. But 1 in 5 workers quit in the last 6 months. 1 in 5. 7 in 10 employees admit they'd stay longer if they had more opportunities. Now we have to ask ourselves, what are more opportunities? But more opportunities is learning things. More opportunities might be spending more time with their supervisor. And look at that. Gen Z and millennials prioritize being happy in their jobs overall. Okay, well, what's the definition of happy? And we can't make happy. People choose happy. However, we can provide opportunities. What are they? People need to tell us what they're looking for. So how important is learning inside our organization? So how are we boosting skills? 10 minutes a day doesn't sound like it should be that hard. Now, if you've got a supervisor who has 40 direct reports, that might be an imbalance, right? So is it just a job, or are we looking at careers? Are we looking to develop people as a part of succession planning? How many of you guys are doing some form of succession planning? And I don't mean planning, I mean doing. I have a client who when we first started talking to them and out of an employee opinion survey, they said we got to be doing some succession planning because the average age was 55. The average age was 55. 15 years later, 15 years later, and I was working with them. So I know this. There's still succession planning. They need to be doing. They got to take on Nike's motto. Just do it already. So are you doing some succession planning? Do employees want to be part of that? Are people tapped on the shoulder? Do they know? And I know the traditional planning that would be years out might not be as applicable because people move and things change and the rapid change of movement. But are we looking at people? Are we grooming people? Have your managers found us somebody who could take their spot? Are they actually doing that? What if someone won the lottery? Someone in Oregon actually won the Powerball. He's leaving his employment. Let's just pretend he's one of our people and he's leaving. Are we prepared? Do we have someone to step in and take over? Who are your retirees? We're losing that knowledge and that history. Are we prepared? Okay, I really have to stop talking. Robin says they have a rule that senior managers have to train their replacement. All right, who else has rules? What are your guidelines? And Robin says that has to happen for at least a year. Now that does create some overlap, right? But then here's the deal. How many of you want to go on vacation? How many of you want to retire and you don't want phone calls after you're gone or on a vacation? How about your people? And so once we know, then we plan. Then that means we're reactionary. That might be, in some respects, too late. If it's a retirement, retirement doesn't mean I'm going to give you a year's notice. It could be 2 months or less. Can you find what you're looking for? In some of your industries, your expertise doesn't grow on trees. Can we groom people in to the positions we need to develop? See, they have low turnover and the average employee is 55 and their tenure is 20 years for one of the folks that's here online with us right now. The good news is, what I like about that, Teresa, is you know your data. We know our numbers, right? Okay. So someone who's having a little bit of audio problems, as supervisors need to develop our team members because it's not learning and developing skills that we may not be doing our job as supervisors. Let's see if I'm reading that right. I think that we as supervisors need to develop our team members because if we're not learning and developing skills, then we may not be doing our job as supervisors. Yeah. I have a philosophy. Our number one job as a supervisor is to develop our people. Years ago, Frito-Lay, one of their requirements is you must develop 2 people to replace you. They must be able to replace you at any given time, to take your job over. And if you cannot do that, you don't get to move up.
Wow.
Wow, right? Then in some respects, here's the deal. Part of their mentality around that, Mel, was the fact that if we do that, we know who has an interest in moving up because you will develop your people and maybe more than 2, right? Because they might be really good at some things, not good at others. Some things may happen. Life happens to people. So just when you think you've got a couple of good folks, one of them goes away, then I'm still down one. If your employer, your supervisor, your manager is not doing a good job of developing you, you're going to leave that department. You're going to have an interest in moving someplace else within the organization because you're not getting those opportunities and you do want to move up. So you're going to be asking HR, the division manager, whomever, to be moved someplace else to have those opportunities because this person isn't working with you. I thought that was a pretty, and this, I mean, truly, this was years and years ago. I do not know if they're still doing that or not, but it was a very open process of information share. Everybody knew what the expectations were in that particular area. Just saying, right? So when we just think about boosting the skills, what's available to you and what are the conversations we're having? How are your managers viewing this? Because I'm guessing some of you have folks who say, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. Well, it will become a priority when the what hits the fan, right? In some fashion or another, which back to Teresa's statement, reactionary, right? So again, what does that look like? And in some respects, you guys tell me, what's the conversation like in your organization? Who owns this process? Are we saying the employer owns it? All of it? And I don't think so. I mean, do we have a culture of learning in general, lifelong learning, right? But also, if the employee owns their career, owns their development, are they coming and asking? Are they presenting ideas? Are they doing their own research? One of my questions when I interview people is, what have you learned on your own dime and your own time? For your own career, your own development, your own professional growth. And I don't care what your position is. What have you done on your own? I think that's telling about somebody in terms of what they're investing in themselves. Are they willing to invest in themselves? And that doesn't mean they have to spend any money. There's a bunch of TED Talks that are online that cost nothing. I attend programs all the time for an hour for free, all the time. So, do they come to their own performance review? Do they come to their own check-in meetings with ideas or suggestions? Or is it us doing that during a performance review? Do we do like the bank I suggested and here's what's available to you? You decide? Thoughts, observations. Maybe we build this into the one-on-ones, the check-in meetings. We ask our managers to start doing this. Okay, I'm not going to say anything.
I was just gonna say what Ashley said. That's a great interview question.
I think the hardest problem, or hardest struggle, especially for being HR professionals, that we can present a program, a training program, skills program, mentoring, and present it to the leadership. But to keep it sustainable, you've got to keep practicing it, and you have to have support. So if you have some managers that are bought into the program, then that's great. But if they leave, they retire, or whatever, the program can disappear and drop. And then even though it existed for a time, the sustainability of keeping that program going without support from leadership and managers following it, we can barely get them to put their time in to get paid. Payrolls, Monday morning, and they're all told to get it in by 10 o'clock, and my payroll manager is chasing them down at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So, I mean, that's paying themselves, so following that, sustaining it, it is heavy lift, and it can be frustrating because as HR people, we do see people that come to us and say, I'm not getting paid enough, I'm not trained enough. And I really like your example, Deborah, was saying, hey, what have you done in your personal life to educate yourself and grow? Because life should be about learning, right? And sometimes people are very transactional. They're like, what are you going to give to me? I'm going to do this. I want something back, right? Transactional. And I always say, well, I also like ownership of what have you done for me lately as your employer? And also have you had that conversation with the manager on your skill sets? Have you taken on extra duties? Because when you try to nail it down with them and say, okay, what extra tasks are you doing? Nothing. What kind of schooling are you going to get, your bachelor's or your associate's or your certificate? Nope. I just want extra money. I just want to be paid because I see on Indeed that this title is getting this. And then the flip side is being the HR professionals as we're recruiting and we're listing these job tasks and these skill sets that this job's supposed to have, right? People aren't reading the job description or the task, and they're applying for jobs. And I understand you can do transactional, you could have a computer degree, and let's say you want to shift over to accounting, so you have strong Excel skill sets, you have strong, some things are transactional, but not all of them. If the job is requiring you to have skills of 5 years of being a payroll administrator, right? So there's a lot of work, I think, on both sides. The employer's responsibility of being clear and consistent on the skills and training and education we need for the job. And managers always tell me, I don't have time to look at this job description. I don't have time to clean it up to make it what it really looks like. And then on the other side of the house, on the employee's side, it's their responsibility to get some learning, get some training, be actively trying to get that extra responsibility and stuff. And if not, there's free will. You can go somewhere else, right? So you worked on yourself, you got your education, you went and got your master's degree. Maybe you spent a lot of money, or you didn't spend a lot of money, but you do have free will to go somewhere else and make big bucks if that's what you think is a good life choice for you. But I think there's both sides, employer and employee responsibility. So a really good comment, Deborah, on saying, hey, what have you done?
Right. And let's face it, some of our positions in terms of who's represented here today, what would make sense? Because I would love it if someone just even read several articles and at our next staff meeting brought up a couple of ideas, the things that they've read recently. Sticking with our industry, what are some trends? Something that we're seeing, something that I'm reading or heard about, I'm wondering if that would be applicable to us. Here's an idea or suggestion for more efficiency or effectiveness. Is that something we could try or do? I've been doing a little research. I took a weekend course with a friend of mine, and it was about X. It was in the winery arena, which has nothing to do with what we do, but there was something about, and I had this aha moment. Could that be a thing? Because there's all these podcasts and webinars and videos. And are you guys using any of these as supplements to more formal kinds of approaches? When I said 10 minutes a day, we've got tons of clients that are out in the field. They can't come in, right? We got journey linemen, we've got fire crews, right? We've got people who are agriculture, we got construction workers. And the answer is, if they can listen to a podcast while they're traveling from point A to point B. In fact, I just found out, I didn't know this. My son's been working with Pepsi and he's a merchandiser. So he's out in the stores. He has his earbuds in all the time. I assumed, and I teach people all the time, don't assume, ensure, ask questions. Shame on Deborah. I assumed he was always listening to music. And I thought it was just hip hop. I was dead wrong. That young man is listening to podcasts, all different kinds of podcasts. And so when he makes a random comment to me, I'm like, where did that come from? Because of what he's listening to. You could create 5 minute, 10-minute little bursts, micro learning, individualized, specific kinds of things. Because here's the deal, in all seriousness, when we go and do more extensive kinds of things, it's called the learning curve. It disappears if we don't revisit it, if we don't share it, if we don't do something. So when we talk about closing that skills gap, when we talk about making it relevant to them, when we talk about making it appropriate for their schedule and what we're trying to do, well, what about micro learning opportunities? Now, it takes someone to help you probably do that. I mean, you can do it on your own. I'm guessing you probably have your hands full with a whole host of other things. I'm also thinking, to your point, there was a thought process in there. It doesn't always have to be the manager or leadership or HR to keep some of these initiatives alive, especially like around mentoring or something like that. Do we have some success stories? Do we have people who are passionate about some of these things like we are? Couldn't they be involved? Maybe they'd like to take the lead. Couldn't we reward them in some fashion for willing to take the lead on some of this, to partner with us? I'm just suggesting it could be an option. And we already sort of brought up our managers. So I'm just going to say, are our managers prepared to do their work and do what we need them to do? Because there's been some studies that say that we want to make it a priority, but yet 24% say their leadership isn't prepared to take on the role of, they don't know what it means to do it. And it's been growing in terms of responsibilities. And we're talking, some people say soft skills. I'm going to say essential business skills to be effective working with the people. And so I think we could add to this list. You could put in the chat box, what do you think your supervisors need to be effective supervisors in today's work world? When we say people skills, I don't even think that that's strong enough of a terminology. What is it that they need? Because here's the deal, and I know a couple of you have actually been through programming with me in this space, let alone have been in a class or something with me. I think supervisors are a cornerstone of our operation. If our supervisors aren't engaged and aren't bringing it each and every day, that transcends to our employees. And they need to be coaches. They need to be good listeners. They need to be asking questions, not about telling people stuff, but truly developing them. But that means they've got to be accountable to their own body of work, but they need to hold people accountable too. And if only 1 in 3 managers are engaged at work, you do the math. How many managers, how many supervisors do you have in your workplace? And one of the best ways to do this is check-in meetings. And that means managers have to set expectations. And least of all, they have to care. Do your managers and supervisors care about training and development? Do they care about people? Do they care about not just with their head, but a little bit with their heart too? Right? I think it all is connected. So if we're going to talk about boosting employee skills, managers, so they can work with employees. And I already mentioned this before, but from a neurodiversity standpoint, truly, how do we accommodate and support our folks in terms of how we all learn differently, the pace, the approach, and things like that? That also means our policies and our procedures and our job descriptions and our welcoming elements of everything that we do in terms of being able to help them to be able to do good work on our behalf in terms of educating our workforce and the cultural shifts in all of its facets. So being able to create that inclusive environment, that caring environment, to make these mentoring opportunities and development opportunities even possibilities, I think is kind of a big deal. So I don't know whether or not you guys are implementing anything in that space. Are you going there with neurodiversity and making some adjustments or exploring that with your employee base now or in the future or at all? Or your training activities that you're doing on site, or more inclusive language? So I gave you a couple of slides on that because I thought that might be helpful, just maybe bringing that back as a conversation to folks, let alone, the external training and development activities. So there's no doubt that there's lots of options out there. And I always try and kind of end with, what will you start working on? There's no shortage. What can you start working on, or who can you start talking to, right? Who will you share the information with, and what might be a good agenda item or conversation starter or survey question to start asking our leadership team, our employee base, what are we doing now? What would we like to be doing? For some of you, if you're a July 1st, budget is kind of already been set and approved. But for others, if you're approaching, summertime in August, where would you like some of your training dollars to go? Do you have some? Can you budget for some? And what would that look like? Ask someone who's interested in this, do some research for some of the free or complimentary activities that are out there. I mean, heck, we do HR Lunch Bunch. This doesn't cost any money. And some of this is what I would consider educational. So that's a benefit from an HR standpoint. So what else is available to folks? All right. If you have questions, I always hang out for questions. Other people want to chit chat more, we certainly will do that. I always want to let you know June 5th is going to be our next program. I don't have a topic. I believe that Eric on staff is going to join you because I'm actually going to be with a client that day. June is a very full month and I could only give so many dates, and I gave up this date. I didn't want to, but Eric was willing to volunteer. So, and in July, then I'm going to ask Kira to come and join us. She's from Wisconsin. She's a longtime friend who actually used to live in Oregon, and she moved and then moved and then moved again. And now she lives in Wisconsin, but she's going to talk about what does it really mean to be a strategic partner with your organization. And that's going to be in July. So that's what we've got coming up. I want to thank all of you for being here today, and thank you for chiming in, both in the chat box and verbally. It's nice to see you. Glad you were here. As always, this is fun. HR Lunch Bunch, again, first Wednesday of every month at 12 noon. Thank you all for joining. I'll make that the official wrap up. If you guys want to hang out and chat for a few minutes, I'd love to do so. Otherwise, thank you again. Appreciate it.